Why Joan Rivers was banned from late-night television. For years, Joan Rivers was one of the funniest and most fearless comedians in America. She was sharp, quick, and never afraid to speak her mind. She appeared hundreds of times on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson and was even considered by many to be Carson's natural successor. But then, almost overnight, she disappeared from late-night television. What happened? Why was Joan Rivers, one of Johnny Carson's closest friends and favorite guests, suddenly shut out of the world she helped build? The answer involves friendship, betrayal, fierce competition, and one decision that changed everything. Joan Rivers began her career in the 1960s. Success did not come easily. She struggled for years before finally getting her big break on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in 1965. Her performance was so impressive that Carson invited her back again and again. Audiences loved her humor, and Carson admired her talent. Over the years, Joan became much more than a regular guest. She frequently filled in as guest host whenever Johnny Carson was away. In an era when female comedians rarely received such opportunities, Joan stood out. Many believed that she was being groomed to eventually take over the show. Their relationship seemed close. Joan often spoke about Carson with affection and gratitude. She credited him with helping launch her career. Carson, in turn, trusted her and respected her comedic instincts. Everything appeared perfect. But by the mid-1980s, Joan Rivers wanted more. Despite her success, she felt frustrated. She had spent years guest hosting, but there was no clear indication that she would inherit The Tonight Show. NBC executives had not promised her anything, and Carson himself never officially named a successor. Then came an unexpected opportunity. The newly formed Fox network wanted to compete with the major television networks. They offered Joan Rivers something unprecedented, her own late-night talk show, The Late Show starring Joan Rivers. It would air directly opposite Johnny Carson. For Joan, it was a dream. She would no longer be a substitute host. She would finally have her own show. It was a chance to make television history and prove that a woman could succeed in late-night television. But there was one problem. Johnny Carson was not informed beforehand. According to Joan Rivers, she desperately wanted to call Carson and explain the situation personally. She later claimed that Carson had always told her to pursue opportunities and that she assumed he would understand. But before she could speak with him, news of the deal leaked to the press. When Joan finally reached out, Carson reportedly hung up on her. He never spoke to her again. To Johnny Carson, this wasn't simply a career move, it was a betrayal. He believed that after 2 decades of friendship and loyalty, Joan should have told him before accepting a show that would directly compete against his own. Joan was devastated. She repeatedly tried to repair their relationship. She sent letters and messages, hoping to explain herself. But Carson remained silent. The pain lasted for decades. Meanwhile, The Late Show starring Joan Rivers premiered in 1986. Initially, expectations were high. Fox hoped Joan could challenge Carson's dominance, but the competition was brutal. Carson remained the king of late-night television, and audiences were slow to embrace the new network. Things behind the scenes became difficult as well. Fox executives interfered with the show, and ratings struggled. Tensions grew between Joan and network management. Then, tragedy struck. Joan's husband, Edgar Rosenberg, served as producer of the show. Under enormous pressure from poor ratings and constant stress, he was fired by Fox executives. The humiliation deeply affected him. Only a few months later, Edgar took his own life. Joan Rivers was heartbroken. She later admitted that she blamed herself for years. She believed that accepting the Fox deal had set off a chain of events that destroyed both her career and her personal life. Suddenly, Joan found herself isolated. Her marriage was gone, her show was canceled, and her friendship with Johnny Carson had ended forever. Many believed her career was over. But Joan Rivers refused to give up. Instead of disappearing, she reinvented herself. She returned to stand-up comedy. She appeared on television shopping channels, wrote books, performed around the country, and slowly rebuilt her reputation. Unlike many stars who faded away, Joan embraced every opportunity. She wasn't ashamed to start over. She often joked that she would work anywhere as long as people paid her. In the 1990s and 2000s, she reinvented herself once again. She became famous for her red carpet fashion commentary. Her sharp jokes and fearless style introduced her to an entirely new generation. Through Fashion Police, reality television, and countless appearances, Joan Rivers became more popular than ever. And yet, one wound never fully healed: her broken friendship with Johnny Carson. Even after Carson retired, the two never reconciled. Joan repeatedly expressed sadness about losing someone she once considered family. She said that not speaking to Johnny was one of the greatest regrets of her life. When Johnny Carson died in 2005, Joan revealed that she had sent a note to his widow expressing sympathy. But she admitted that the pain of their separation stayed with her until the end. Some people sided with Carson, believing Joan should have spoken to him first. Others believed Carson was too harsh and should have forgiven her. After all, Joan was pursuing her own dream and trying to create opportunities that women in television rarely received at the time. Whatever side people take, one thing is clear. Joan Rivers was never officially banned from late-night television by any network. There was no written blacklist. But after her fallout with Johnny Carson, many believed that his enormous influence in the industry made life much harder for her. Combined with the failure of her Fox show and personal tragedy, Joan found herself largely excluded from the late-night world for years. Yet, she never stopped fighting. In fact, Joan Rivers accomplished something extraordinary. She transformed rejection into reinvention. She survived professional setbacks, personal tragedy, and public criticism. Instead of disappearing, she rebuilt herself again and again. By the time she passed away in 2014, Joan Rivers was recognized as one of the greatest comedians in history and a pioneer who opened doors for countless women in entertainment. And perhaps that's the greatest irony of all. The woman who was once pushed out of late-night television eventually became a legend whose influence reached far beyond it. Because Joan Rivers proved that even when doors close, determination, humor, and resilience can create new ones. And in the end, that may be her greatest legacy.